The Newport Quays housing development at Port Adelaide has courted controversy since being announced more than a decade ago as the project that would finally reinvigorate Port Adelaide. This week, Premier Jay Weatherill announced that the project would be scrapped immediately after the completion of just 2 stages, and that the local community would be widely consulted over what should be built in its place. While that sounds fine in principle, many in the port say the state government is already well aware of what's required and that past consultations have fallen on deaf ears. Paul Clarick has the story.
Its streets were built and paved with manual labour, back in the days when fire brigades were horse-powered and the inner harbour employed thousands of people to help move what arrived from across the seas.
When I was the girl, this place was, the shops were full, the pubs were full, the docks were full, the place was wonderful.
But Port Adelaide's glory days are long gone. In the decades since the inner port stopped receiving cargo, local employment has shrunk, shops sit untenanted, and once glorious buildings are an eyesore.
They've got all these signs up the port happening, but it's not happening.
Oh, a lot more could be done, couldn't it?
It's a shame to see it empty, and it's been like this for over 20 years.
Even the Labor Party's own pub, the Colac Hotel, closed its doors a few months ago. This week, as punters placed bets on the Melbourne Cup, the state government cut its losses on the Newport Quays development, one of the biggest development gambles that characterised the Rand Foley era.
Ultimately, this is about putting power back into the port. It's about bringing life back into the port.
The development was supposed to provide 2,500 apartments around the inner harbour. The project will now be stopped after just 2 stages were completed, comprising about 430 apartments.
There are so many beautiful historic buildings, but also so many closed shops. There is a real sense of a possibility about this area, and we want to take back this development into government to make it all that we think it should be.
Some, including those in the Liberal Party, believe the announcement is more about winning back grassroots support with constituents unhappy with the performance of retiring local member Kevin Foley.
Foley, he did do a lot in the younger days and all that sort of stuff, but he's done nothing since. Nothing.
And even the Labor Party's likely candidate is distancing herself from the project.
You need to pay attention to the way that the community feels about the development and the impact it has on the local economy, not just build high-rise and put people in. It's got to be much more situated.
She's likely to come up against Port Adelaide infield Mayor Gary Johansson, who's planning to run as an independent.
This is the one that I most commonly see international tourists taking photos of.
Since taking office, the former Liberal Party member has been calling for laws to force the owners of buildings like this to clean up and maintain their property.
And it's so disappointing when you see the pigeon poo and the flaky paint and the broken windows and things like that. You think, this is not the way to showcase not only the port, but this is our state that we should be showcasing through these historic buildings.
Council is also calling for a museum precinct to be established in the area and has also already made submissions to the state government calling for tram services from the city to be extended through the port.
The viaduct down there, which is the train line that goes above the road, we would like to see that removed and the tram come along down the centre of Commercial Road and then go down St Vincent Street so that the tram brings the people right into the heart of Port Adelaide.
Like Captain Hart, who started the Hart's Mill, has an amazing story. He was Premier of South Australia 3 times.
Pat Netschatowski takes historical tours of the port and is chair of the local branch of the National Trust. She says any new master plan needs to recognise, protect and emphasise the area's connection with the state's earliest days of European settlement.
We need some life and colour brought back to the river, retain some of the heritage, respect local people's views. There are lots of people who are creative and have a range of views, and I'd like to see those respected.
And that's a concern echoed by the local environmental group.
This is probably the most heavily consulted community in Adelaide, I think. The problem is people don't seem to listen to what happens at these consultations.
One of the reasons the Newport Quays project stalled was an adverse finding last year by the Environment Protection Authority about the amount of pollution from local industry affecting the land around Dock 1. Locals say that needs to be addressed in the new master plan.
What really needs to happen is the emissions from Adelaide Brighton Cement need to be very tightly controlled. Just to the north of the Adelaide Brighton Cement we've got the fuel depots, and they are an explosive risk, and we think at the long term they need to go.
This week's announcement caught Newport Quays developer Urban Construct by surprise. It declined a request to be interviewed for this program, but says it will consider legal action to seek more than the $5 million the state government is offering in compensation. But as the state government goes back to the drawing board and communities brace themselves for another round of consultation, there are some businesses doing their bit to make the port happen. In one of St Vincent Street's oldest buildings, former Barossa Valley identity Gerald Viergever is setting up a Parisian brasserie. At the moment it's only open to friends, but in the tradition of the port, that can be just about anybody, once you declare yourself in.
The thing that I like about the port is that it is very, very tribal.
It's not just a vote of faith in the future. As Gerald Viergever sees it, to rebuild a community, you need people. And to attract people, you need to give them a place to mix and belong.
When I have people in here, it feels good. And that's what you want if you're going to run a restaurant. People come past and they start chatting to me and they tell me about the past. You know, amazing little stories I got out of people, which is good fun. And I like the port.
Ils ont tous les mêmes manières.
Paul Clarick with that story.